Record. Welcome back to another episode of Lead Sell Grow, everyone. Harry, let's introduce our amazing guest today. Marie Cosgrove is the CEO of Balance Back, a company she bought after they fired her. She's a motivational speaker who's spoken on the same stages with the legendary Les Brown, Nick Vujicic, and John Maxwell. After surviving an extremely abusive childhood and struggling with her own self-image, Marie has given back by inspiring and mentoring young women all over the world. She's a coach, speaker, mentor, CEO, mother, and an amazing inspiration to all who know her. Welcome to the show, Marie. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and I'm honored to be here on the show with you guys. Thank you so much for
We're
inviting
honored
me.
too. We are honored.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we were just talking right before the show, and want to congratulate you in front of everyone. We're going through this coronavirus right now, and you just had a wedding in your family.
Yeah, my son, my 23-year-old son, 22-year-old son got married, and his wife's going in the military. They wanted to tie the knot before she left May 1st.
What branch is she going into?
She Army.
Oh, okay, very nice. Harry, you got any kids that are about to get married?
No, my oldest is 21, and I hope they all get married like soon.
They all still at home?
Two, yeah, they're all technically dependents of mine, but thank you.
Very, yeah, no problem. Very cool. So, Marie, um, welcome. It's so nice to have you on the show. Could you just give us a background of, like, I know your childhood, but for the listeners, tell us. I mean, it's just such an amazing story. I'd love to hear it again.
Sure. Well, I didn't have a traditional upbringing because I don't know who my father was. I'm a product of rape. And how this happened is my mom was in a car accident. My grandparents were traveling to Mexico to a wedding from the US. And this kind of reminds me, this situation that they went through and the coronavirus that we're going through now kind of reminds me of how uncertain the future is, but how important it is to maintain hope. And what I mean is they were going to this wedding expecting to have a huge celebration, have lots of fun, and it's going to be a great time. But on the way over there, they had a car accident, totally unexpected. It was raining, and they were driving on a road called La Espina del Diablo, the devil's spine, and my mother's head was crushed. And it was about 24 hours before anybody stopped to help. And people that actually did stop before, but it wasn't to help, it was to steal. They stole all of their belongings, everything they owned. And finally, a truck stopped 24 hours later and took them to the closest hospital. At the hospital, the doctor said that my mom was really lucky to still be alive, but she wasn't going to make it because she had severe bleeding in the brain. And so my grandmother, being a woman of faith, she said, well, you need to just do surgery to stop the bleeding. And the doctor says, well, that's not possible because we don't have any surgeons here with the capacity to do that type of surgery. And to bring someone from another hospital, take them a day to get here. By the time they get here, she will be dead. And my grandmother said, I don't care. You're going to bring someone to do the surgery. So they did. They brought someone. And fortunately, my mom did survive the surgery, but she was in a coma for several months. And the doctor says, well, there's no sign of recovery. We're just going to have to pull the plug.
Oh my
And
gosh.
my grandmother said, no, don't do that. Just give me one more day. And my grandmother, she just maintained that faith and prayed. And I know it's difficult because for some people it seems like our prayers are not answered. Fortunately for my grandmother, the next day my mom opened her eyes and she had to learn how to walk, talk, and how to do everything all over again, but she still had brain damage. So it was very devastating to my grandmother because this was her first child. And my mother, according to the family history and everything, was very beautiful. She was in college, uh, on her way to do great things. And so for my grandmother, it was devastating that this daughter that she had all of a sudden didn't have the mental or the physical capacity she had before the accident. So her whole life changed. But she was able to go home. And when she went home, after she was learning how to walk, talk, and do everything all over again, she was raped. And she came home, she told my grandparents she was raped, and that resulted in a pregnancy. The doctor said, well, you're going to have to just abort this child because she's on a lot of medications. She's got mental problems, physical disabilities. There's no way she can carry this child to term, plus all the medication she's on. This child's going to be born with all kinds of abnormalities. And on top of that, the shame that's going to come on the family to have a child out of wedlock. So
where was this, Marie? Was this in Mexico or where?
In the States. So they had brought her back to the States. So now it was the doctors in the States telling my mom that, hey, you can't have this child. So my mother said, you know, God saved my life. I'm not going to take the life that's inside of me now. I'm not. And the doctors she doesn't know what she's talking about because she doesn't have a full mental capacity and because of the brain damage. So they told my grandparents, you need to sign documentation to abort this child. And my grandparents said, no, we'll help her. The doctor says, you don't know what you're talking about. Y'all are too old. And then how are you going to take care of a child with all these physical disabilities? You don't know how this child's going to come out. And my grandmother said, I don't care how this child's going to come out. I'm going to help take care of the child. And because of my grandmother's decision and my mother's decision to stay, just to stay hopeful, I'm here today, and I'm so thankful for that decision. And it reminds me every day that we can still have hope, even though everything around us seems tragic or it doesn't seem to be going our way. And I know a lot of us are in it. You know, they say we're all in this together. We're in the same boat, but we're really not. We're just in the same storm. We're on the same storm, but and I don't know who wrote this because I read this somewhere, but it's so true that, you know, some people's boats, you know, they may be sinking. Like some people may have lost their jobs. Some people have more work than they've ever had because of the coronavirus. Some people are making more money than they've ever made, and some people are making less money. So everybody's in a different boat, the same storm. Just everyone is being affected differently. And I think about my grandparents and how, you know, their faith, they were going through this storm, but they chose how to react to it, and they chose to remain hopeful through it all. And even though there was tragedy, I mean, my mom never got to live a normal life because of the mental disabilities, the brain damage, but they still remained that hope, and they still remained positive. And so it was a lesson for me, but I didn't always see it that way.
Sure.
You know, I you know, as a kid, I saw myself as a victim, and I went through this whole, you know, feeling bad about myself.
Well, can I ask at what age were you told this story?
So I heard it pretty much from the day I was born. I mean, I don't know the exact time because my grandmother had a beauty salon, so she would take me to work with her, and I heard it all the time. So I grew up hearing the story about the rape part that really didn't sink in, or I really didn't understand that till I was about 8 or 9, because my mother had gotten married, and she was married when I was born. So I thought that was my dad.
Right.
Yeah. And I didn't really get it until I was around 8 or 9, and this lady walked into my grandmother's beauty salon, and she gave me her number, and she said, and I've not shared this anywhere, like only like close friends, so I've not shared this publicly, gave her gave me a phone number, and she said, I'm your grandmother. Well, at that time, I thought all old ladies were my grandma. Like, I just thought every old lady came into the salon.
Abuela, abuelita.
Yeah, abuelita. I was like, abuela. So it didn't sink in. And then my grandmother told me well, he's not your father. His name was George Cholik. He was Czechoslovakian. And I didn't understand. And I think as I got older, then I began to comprehend and understand.
Sure.
And then I actually called that number when I was around 13 years old. I called and he answered and he said, God forgave me for what I've done. Don't call again.
Oh my goodness.
So
Yeah.
he knew.
How did that
and
make you feel?
Very sad. Very sad. It hurt because and I told some family members, and they said, you shouldn't feel bad because you're blessed that you have a family and he doesn't deserve you. But the psychology of it, I think kids, they always long for that mother, father. They want to know who
Sure.
their dad is. And I don't think I comprehended the rape part. I didn't comprehend that until I was a lot older. But I still, like, even today, like, I'm curious, what does he look like, and
Right.
I do know from her that he has a family. I might have half brothers and sisters somewhere out there. I don't know where, but it's just always been a curious thing for
Yeah.
me.
How has that whole experience, which is absolutely amazing to hear for the first time, how has that motivated you from there when you were going through your high school years? Because this brings you like to the age of 13 or so.
Hmm.
And you had obviously a very unique background. And high school is tough enough on kids in general. So was this like a big motivating thing for you, or was it like something that just kind of held you back, or that you were bummed out about, or
I, during that time, it was really hard because I got very close to George Cholik, who was my stepdad, but I thought he was my real dad. And he didn't treat me like a stepchild,
yeah,
treated me like a bonus child. He was just so good to me. He actually had a band called Country Rollin', and it was a very successful band back in the day in Texas. And he actually made a couple of albums, and he played steel guitar, country music. So I was so close to him, and right around that time, like soon after, he ended his life. He
oh
committed
boy,
suicide, and I saw that, and it was just devastating to me because I'll never forget that day. I was with my grandmother, and I'm so sorry. If you want me to not talk about this, I won't. But
No,
no,
this
okay,
absolutely. This
because
is
it
all
might be
about, there's so many lessons in here. It's just amazing. So yeah,
it might be hard for some to hear, but I was with my grandmother. It was a Sunday afternoon, and my grandmother said, we've got to go something. We got to go visit your dad, and we're going to his apartment to go visit him. And when we got there, I just knew, I don't know, on the drive over there, I felt inside something was wrong, like something was horribly wrong. And when we got there, there was a lot of police and there was a yellow tape. And I just ran like really fast, and the police tried to hold me back, but they just couldn't hold me back. And I'll never forget that he was hanging from the ceiling, and it was just hard. It was so traumatizing for me that my grandmother couldn't stop me from crying.
sure,
And so she took me to the priest. And what's so weird about this is he connected us to some doctor, and they prescribed Valium. And I never took it. I would spit it out. And I'm so thankful that I never took it because it's very addictive,
yeah,
very addictive. And I never took it. And I just kind of, I went through a major depression, and I couldn't snap out of it. Because I didn't understand why he would do such a thing. It didn't make sense to me. And I couldn't comprehend it. And I blamed my mom for it. I blamed everybody for it. And I just went through a major depression, and the counselor suggested that I skip school for an entire year. So I didn't go to ninth grade. I didn't finish my ninth grade year, and I graduated a year later. But that really impacted me in in a significant way.
right. I can't imagine. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, so the whole idea of where people get their drive in life, right? You obviously have massive drive, and where you have, and not that you have ended up there yet, because you're still traveling. And I
Hmm.
mean, I just love the expression that you just said. I think it was just before we started, and you said something about every day I'm growing, right? So
Yeah.
I just love that. So when you look back at your youth, and we all look back and say, boy, I wish I did this different, and I could have done that or whatever. But
Hmm.
yet you have looked back, and obviously have incredible lessons that you've learned that have put you in this place in life where you are today. But yet you still feel like you're growing. So can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, I believe that we never stop growing. And this is a lesson I learned from my grandfather. My grandfather was a barber, so he had his barber shop right next to my grandma's beauty salon. And they both retired at the same time, but when he retired, he says, you never stop learning. You always have to. He says, Marie, it's like a muscle. And he used to run every day. He walked to work while my grandma drove because he wanted to exercise. And he would tell me, just like you exercise to keep those muscles strong, you have to exercise your mind to keep your mind strong. And he says, no one's
Mhm.
ever going to put me in a nursing home because I'm not going to get Alzheimer's, because I'm going to exercise my mind. So when he retired, he went back to school. He went back to
Awesome.
school and he would
I
read the
love him.
dictionary. Yeah,
Great.
I did
Sounds
too.
great.
Yes. And so he was just a great inspiration in my life. And he's the one that really instilled in me the importance of learning, that you, it doesn't matter if you're 100 years old, you never finish learning everything. There's
So there's
always
still
something to
hope
do.
for me. There's still hope for
Yeah,
me because I'm
there's
almost 100.
no, you're not, but there's hope for all of us.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So, so Marie, so high school, you skipped ninth grade. Somewhere along the line, I mean, I'm assuming you didn't just snap out of it and now you're no longer depressed and you're a happy person, but somewhere between then and your, late teens, you got into the workforce, you started getting a job. Talk to us about that transition, because there are a lot of people that kind of they're deep in the weeds with depression and not knowing what's going on or what's going to happen. How did you get out of that?
So one of the things, I started working really young. As a teenager, I worked at a doctor's office. I did computer programming. So back then it was, D-Base, COBOL, all these software programs. And
How did you learn that? Hold on one second. So you got grandparents who are running a barber shop and a beauty salon or a hair
Yep,
salon?
beauty salon. Yep.
Eh, What's the difference, by the way? Is it
I don't think there's a difference, or not that I'm
okay?
aware of.
Good, got it. I don't know if like women go get makeup. I don't know. Anyway, so they're running. They're. I'm assuming your grandparents weren't very computer savvy
No.
back then, and your mom, your stepfather, essentially, or your father, he's a musician. Your mom, she's in her condition. So where did you even learn the
High
computer
school,
stuff?
they had a computer programming class, and it was like the last elective available. And believe it or not, I was failing everything, but I had 100 in that class because I thought it was so much fun that you can create
Wow.
these little programs. And I'm like, oh, this is fun. So I got a job at my, first started at a doctor's office. Then I worked at a print shop, and I lied to them about my computer skills. They had I just thought I could learn anything, and they said, "Well, can you do typesetting?" And it was a typesetting machine. I'm like, "Sure, I can do that." And they said, "Well, go talk to this typesetting department." I went over there and I said, "What are the codes? Can I have a copy?" And I just like memorized them. So the next day when we did the test, it was just all by memory, and I got the job. But
Awesome.
I shouldn't have lied. That's wrong. Don't go out and lie about it. But that's what I did.
We call it acting. So you're acting a role that you were a typesetter, thus, it's okay.
It's not
Yes.
lying if you pass the test.
Exactly.
But yeah, and I think my drive now looking back, because I've had to go through a lot of this learning why I do the things that I do. And one of the things that I recognize is somehow subconsciously, I wanted to prove to the world I'm worth something. I have value. And now I realize we don't have to do that. You don't have to do all this, but for me somehow internally that's how I acted out. So in my job, I've always been very successful in almost every job I've had. I've been very successful. And I think that's where that drive comes from, or has come from in the past, which I'm not there yet. Now I realize you had asked about the depression. One of the realizations that I came to was that we have no control over other people, their decisions, what they do, and how people act. We have no control of, sometimes the government does what they're going to do, and we have to be careful who we trust in. And I came to the realization that even though you may love someone so much, we can't control what they do. That's their choice, that's their decision, and there's nothing we can do about it. And as a result of that, some people are going to make decisions that are going to hurt us, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot, but we can't control it. All we can control is what we choose to do with what they do. So if they do something that hurts us, we can choose to be bitter, resentful, or we can choose to accept, hey, it's sad what they did, that was their choice, and just be content with our situation, with our decision and our choices. Because if we react based on somebody else's decision, that's not going to help anybody. It's not going to help us, and it's going to put us in a worse situation.
That's a great observation about life in general, isn't it?
Amazing.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, very powerful.
So all right, so you're in a print shop, and then what happens after that?
So after that, I got married really young. I was 19, and it was just a not a good marriage. And I won't get into all the details, but I got a position at a bank, and I lied again. It was.
You're acting again.
Yeah,
You're like the actress.
Yeah.
I admire your consistency.
So it was a purchasing position, and I needed that because in the print shop they moved me from. They said I'd be good at sales, so they moved me in sales. But at the time, my husband was really jealous, and to save my marriage, I thought I can't do sales anymore because he was beginning to follow me to my sales, meetings and stuff. So I said, forget this. So I lied. I said I had experience in purchasing. I saw this position, and they said, what's your experience? I purchased paper, I purchased ink for the print shop, but it wasn't like the level of purchasing they wanted.
Sure.
I got the job, and then I really love marketing. So the marketing girl we became good friends, and she was asking me for ideas. And in the print shop, one of the things how I did sales was when I would go try to get a big deal, since I had experience now with the typesetting and graphic design, the way it was done way back in the days, I would just design something for them and for free. And so that's how I did really well in sales there.
And that was hard to come by back then. Like, it's not like Adobe Photoshop or whatever was very easy.
All coding. Like a box, you had to multiply by a certain thing, and then, all these codes.
Oh my goodness.
And you couldn't see what it looked like until it printed, and the photographic paper was so expensive, so you couldn't make mistakes.
So you gave them a gift.
I gave them a gift. I did. So when she asked me for ideas, I'd give her all these ideas for ads and stuff. And then one day she took me out to eat with the president, and they passed me a note, and I had only been on the job several months. So I thought, oh, I'm fired. Oh my goodness. Cause I thought it was a note saying you're fired. So I opened it. They said, do you want to be the marketing director? And I looked at her, and I'm like, but you're the marketing director. And she says, but you're better at it. And I go, but you got a marketing degree. I don't. She goes, but I don't have ideas. You do. And I'll take the purchasing position. So we
Oh my goodness.
swapped. And then I was in charge of marketing for 7 different locations. We grew from like several locations to 7 by the time I left, and the reason I left there was because they were bought out by a bigger bank. You know, banks are always merging.
Right.
And so they was bought out by another bank. And then I began working for I started my own freelance marketing agency. And then from there, I went to work for USAA, which is insurance for the military. And I did what's called Alliance Services. And I handled the marketing for FedEx, Sprint, Earthlink, and all the big alliance partners. So,
Wow. So this was in San Antonio?
yes, in San Antonio.
Yeah, I love USA. Probably one of my favorite companies.
Yeah, it's a great company.
Most likely because you got their marketing off the ground.
Yeah, they're a great company.
Absolutely. Okay, so you went to USAA. All right. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. I get excited. What happened then?
So then I started with one line of business, and then with this 6 months, we made it profitable. So it was so profitable, they gave me another line of business, and then another one, and then another one. But by this time, I was I was out of town traveling for a business trip. When I came home, and this was my second marriage, so I was on my second marriage now, and I came home early, and what I saw was just so devastating. My boys had been beat so bad. I just grabbed them and I left.
How many
And I
kids
didn't
did you
look
have
back.
then?
At the time, four
So you-
kids.
Wow. So
Yeah.
4 kids, and you just grabbed them and you left.
I grabbed them and I left, and I didn't look back. And I left this, 6-figure, the position, the job at USA, left everything. We left with nothing. And parental rights. He lost parental rights. We had one child together. So that was the fourth, and he lost parental rights. So I'm, literally a single parent with 4 kids, raising them. And I didn't know, I didn't know what was next, but I was just thankful. By this time, I had developed this mindset of being thankful, for we're no longer in, being abused. My kids are never going to get hurt again. I'm thankful we're safe. I'm thankful, that they're not going to be in that position again. That's all I could hope for. I didn't know what was next, but I knew I couldn't go to a 9-to-5 job. No one would give me one because my son, my oldest, was diagnosed with JDMS, and it's an autoimmune disease. And at that time, there was only one doctor in Houston who treated that. And so that was very expensive, having to go once a month for medications. He had physical therapy. He doesn't have that anymore. He's 28 years old, healthy, married, 2 daughters. Thank God he's doing well. But at that time, it was hard. So I thought if I get into sales, I could have my own hours. I could request commission, and the sky's the limit if you're on commission, right? That was my mindset. So nobody would give me a job. Everybody said, you don't have experience. I'm like, look, I manage a $600 million marketing budget for USA. If I can convince them how to spend their millions of dollars, I could sell. And they're like, no, it's not the same thing. So finally, I convinced a company to give me an opportunity if I paid my own way for training. So I went to training, got 100 on all the tests, and I was excited because I'm like, yes, I'm in. But the president
Wait. So hold on, hold on, back up. What type of company was it?
It was a medical device distribution company at that time.
So you went to a medical device company, no medical device sales experience whatsoever, and you told them to give you a chance, and you were gonna pay your way for training.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty normal everyday story.
What would you do if somebody came to you and said, I'll pay for my own training, Harry, will you hire me?
I would hire them. I mean, if they
Wow.
were that much of a go-getter, absolutely.
They didn't want to hire me though.
No, I mean, they're nuts, but you stuck with them, right?
I did because after the training, they were like, some of you, even though you did well, you're not going to make it because you don't have experience. And this was back in the 90s, I was in my late 20s, so this was a long time ago. And they said, this is a man's world. This is high capital equipment, $35,000 to $70,000 to $150,000 pieces of equipment. You can't do this. And I said, look, give me a chance, straight commission. You have nothing to lose. So finally.
But this was the 1990s.
Yeah,
Wasn't
late.
the 1890s, right? I mean,
When
Right.
Harry went through high school.
right, exactly. I'm just thinking, it's like, what kind of company is back in the 90s is saying this is a man's world? So
Well, yeah,
I mean, so you were in a weird little situation, obviously.
Was it
I
Texas?
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Texas, but the thing is, with medical devices, it was mostly male. It was all male. I was the only female in the room. There's like a group of
Okay.
40 guys. I was the only minority, the only female in the room. And, you know, in pharmacological or pharmaceuticals, it's mostly women now.
Yeah.
But back then in medical devices, it's different.
Okay.
So that's the way it was back then. And even today, you mostly have men doing the high-end $1 million
Yeah.
pieces of equipment. It's mostly men, but things have changed a lot. There's a lot of women doing it now.
You were groundbreaking.
So I got the job, but unfortunately my grandfather, who I shared with you earlier, he had a big impact in my life, was diagnosed with leukemia. So I knew I had 30 days, but I didn't know how much time he had left. So I spent every day by his bedside, and 3 weeks later, he passed away. So I got a call from the president, and he says, look, you haven't sold anything. We're going to terminate your contract. And I'm like, wait, I have 1 minute left. Let me have this 1 week left. And he says, okay, yeah, whatever. He just laughed and hung up. And that week I went to work and I called and a lot of doctors. And finally, on the last day, I ended up selling a doctor that had just opened up his own practice, 6 offices, and I sold him 6 machines. So I met my quota. These are like $37,000 to $50,000 pieces of equipment. So I met my quota for like the next couple of months.
What were you selling?
So at that time, it was pain management equipment for pain management. And, you know, the sad thing is after about a year, I lost that job because the manufacturer cut the contract with the distributor. And they asked if I would sell for them direct, but the distributor said they would sue me and I didn't want to get in a lawsuit. So I went on my own and I started selling for Balance Back, and it's equipment for dizziness, concussion, traumatic brain injuries. And I went through the same thing, you know, experience. And when they saw that I had a track record, they gave me an opportunity. So it wasn't quite as hard. But I became the #1 national sales representative for that company as well. I did really well. But then one day I get called, and I remember the day because I had just done Baylor University and University of Texas, and I was at a restaurant. The VP was coming down to see me. So I thought I'm getting a promotion or something big's happening because I just did some huge sales.
Sure.
And they said, we're really proud of you. We're proud of what you're doing. You're doing so well, and we want to offer you a position. So I'm thinking like VP or maybe stock options, something big, right? He hands me a sheet of paper and I look at it, and what he was offering me was what I was making in a month, what they wanted to pay me in a year. And I was like,
goodness.
Oh, wow.
I can't do this. Yeah, I can't accept this. I'll stay on the pay structure I'm on. Thank you very much. And they're like, well, if you don't accept it, you either accept it or you're fired.
Oh my goodness.
What?
And yeah, and so I went from making a really good income to making nothing. And here I'm a single mom, not knowing what's coming next. So like, you know, one day I'm really happy. I'm a sales rep. I'm content being a sales rep. I'm content with the way things are going, and boom, the next day everything's just taken right under me. So you never know what's going to happen.
Right. Yes, this has been a theme, hasn't it?
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of like people are going through right now, actually, going through this
Yeah.
COVID, right? I mean, similar. So, wow. Sorry, Marie. So, okay, where'd you go after? So I'm assuming that you didn't take the position.
No, I couldn't because there was no way I could afford, I'd go bankrupt because what they didn't understand is I was paying my own marketing, I was paying my own travel. And in order for me to make a sale, say in New York City, I had to travel with 4 kids, I had to travel with a nanny, and that's expensive.
Can you
And
imagine?
so I couldn't make those sales, and I would have to, and I sold all over the US. So there's just no way I could afford, I'd go bankrupt, if I accepted what they were offering. So I couldn't, I just couldn't afford it.
Knowing what you know now, right? And you're growing every single day, and since that point, that Marie's a whole different woman today. Why do you think they did that?
Greed, they thought, that's what they told me. They said, you're not an engineer, you're not a doctor, you shouldn't be making that kind of money. Hey, we're doctors, we built this company, so we can do it without you. The only reason they buy from you is because it's a good product. They don't buy for you for any other reason.
Oh
And
my
we can
gosh.
just sell direct. So that's what they thought. They thought they were going to save a lot of money without having to pay me the big commission checks.
Got it. Yeah, you introduced the product to the market. It had some familiarity, probably got some traction going, and they thought, yeah, it has nothing to do with Marie. It's just our awesome product.
Hmm.
Okay, so what happens then? Where
Um,
did you go?
well, I could have remained bitter, and I think of the lessons my grandfather taught me about forgiveness. And forgiveness doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, because it hurt. It hurt so much. I mean, I was devastated. But my grandfather told me, it doesn't, you don't do tit for tat. Revenge, he always told me revenge is the Lord's. Don't try to seek your own revenge. Leave it alone. So as much as I wanted to, I didn't. I just had to figure something else out. And I thought, well, I'm good at sales. I've done this before. I'll go find someone else to sell for. And I found a couple of companies to sell for, which I did. But in the process, I had developed wonderful relationships with clinicians. As I'm sharing with them what happened to me, he says, we need this product. Can you find it for us? It didn't exist. So we created a product, and I started a new company, and I got FDA clearance. And within 2 years, the company that fired me called me, and they said, hey, we heard your success. You're doing so well. Do you want to invest in our company? And I think back, and I think, if I was bitter,
Yeah.
people told me, why don't you sue them? Why don't you do this? If I would have done that, I would have never had that opportunity. They would have never
Uh-huh.
called me.
Right.
So I flew to Ohio, because I was in Texas. So I flew to Ohio, and I brought in an accountant to look at the books, and he shows me the books, and he says, Marie, look at the sales. They're amazing. I go, yeah, they're so awesome. And he says, you did 80% of those sales. He goes, look at your name. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't know that. So I said, I want to buy the company. And instead of investing, I want to buy all the shares. And 6 months later, I bought the company that had fired me.
But you didn't buy it for their asking price, I heard.
No, I didn't. I did not. I got a good deal on it. And that was 10 years ago. And at that time, they said, yeah, she's going to bankrupt the company. She's going to bankrupt herself. Within 6 months, the company will be gone. Well, 10 years later, we're still here. And I'm not saying we haven't
Way
had
to go.
challenges. Even during the COVID, we're having challenges, because our main
Sure.
doctors are neurologists and audiologists, and most of those have been asked to shut their doors
Mm.
during COVID.
Yeah. So if I can ask, during this whole period of time where you got into sales from the marketing, what was your training, sales training? Were you reading? How did you learn how to sell? Or is this all pure natural instinct?
Well, I believe that I got a lot of my sales training from my grandmother's beauty shop, believe it or not.
That's the only place
How
they can
so?
sell you a $50 bottle of shampoo,
Right,
Harry.
yes, exactly. I'll even buying shampoo.
Yeah.
All right. So, what's the sales secret from the hair
Right.
salon?
For example, my grandmother, she always had cookies and coffee she always had a gift for everyone. It was like really customer service driven. During Christmas, she was so loved. I remember during Christmas, almost half the salon was filled with gifts from her customers, because they loved her so much. But then
Yeah.
she was always giving. She wasn't looking at, what's in it for me. It's like, how can I help you? And also, when on weekends, she was a collector of antiques. So on weekends we hit flea markets, and she bought all these and then she'd sell them because had so much. So then she had like a booth at a flea market where I'd help her sell. And she taught me all of these little, we're going to sell it for this price. This is how much you can mark down, and, etc. And so she'd leave me there and she'd say, I'm going to pay you based on how much you sell. So are you kidding me? In a day, I'd make $200-300. And for a kid, that's a lot of money, for one day. Yeah. And so I did the best I could in sales, and everything I learned, I would say I learned from her. Of course, I read a lot of books. I don't believe you're born a salesperson. It's what I've been taught by others, like my grandmother, and books that I've read. And I don't agree with everything I've read. In fact, some of the things I've read, I tried for a little bit and they backfired. And so through trial and error, I've learned some of these sales techniques.
What would you say is the biggest surprise that you have found out to be true from going into sales to actually being in sales? Something that really surprised you once you were in sales and became successful compared to whatever you might have thought sales was like prior to getting into it.
Okay. I have to kind of think on that one, think of a situation of something that I thought sales was like, but then I realized it wasn't. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, can you ask the question, because it's way better the way I asked it.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah. You try to interpret. Okay, English is only my first language, and I'm still learning it. But if you, so it's all about.
But see what Marie just did right there, right? I mean, how many sales reps would just jump in, answering, not really understanding that? Yeah, she's like, hold on. Yeah, let me understand. Yeah. Let me ask your question better than you just asked your question, Harry.
So I don't know that I can think of a specific situation, but I'll share one with you. And I know if there's sales experts, I don't mean to be offensive, but I took a course on NLP, and I heard from a sales rep, this works. This is amazing. You got to take this course. So I took the course, got the, did the whole thing, bought all the books, the CDs, the cassettes, immersed myself in it. And I was already successful in sales when I learned this. And so I tried it out, and it just totally backfired on me. And then I realized, oh my goodness, it's for me, it was manipulation tactics. We don't have to manipulate. You don't have to speak someone's exact language. You need to understand where their heart is. What are their needs? And if you're sincere and you're honest, not in yourself or what you're trying to gain, because if you're always looking at what you're trying to gain, you're not going to be successful. You may be for the short while. Maybe NLP might help you for the short while. But I've been in medical for 25 years now, and I still have customers that call me and say, Marie, should I buy this device? Can you research it for me? Because they trust me.
Right.
And I have been in it long enough to see sales reps come and go, and they have to go sell something different. They have to go work for someone else because they've burned their bridges. Yeah. They did a good job selling, but their reputation, they lied to make the sale, and then it came out later on, or they used manipulation tactics, and that never helps. And so I stay clear away from NLP or any type of manipulation tactics. And there's one of the most powerful lessons that I learned was from an older man. He was so amazing. He was in sales. He's passed away now, but he was selling way back in the day. I don't know, in the 50s, 40s, maybe, bras. Like men used to go to house way back in the day to sell bras. It's the weirdest thing.
Is it the Van Lay company?
So, he was like, he became the
That's
top,
the bro, Harry.
He became the top rep in the country selling bras. This is weird.
That is weird.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I need you to try this on.
All right.
So after that, he started selling. I don't remember exactly what he sold, but he was $1 million producer. He would make over $1 million a year in
In the
sales.
50s.
And yeah, this is
Wow.
like way back, and maybe longer than that, because this was when I met him. I was like 31, and he was already in his 80s. Okay, so
Yeah.
who knows when it was, way back.
Yeah.
And he became a really good friend of mine, and he taught me this. He says, I never ever counted my commission check. I never knew how much I was going to get. I didn't care. I didn't look at that. And he said, don't ever look at your commission check about that. The money will come if you do the right thing. And then one of the things, so I started testing this. So I would be out with sales reps, and they'd be writing down, I'm going to make this much commission. This is how much I'm going to make. And I'm going to close this doctor, and I'm going to make 30% or whatever the commission was
Sure.
at the time.
Yeah.
And they never made it. And they'd be just so disappointed, be angry.
Right.
They'd be furious. And I just go in, if I can help you get what you want, and help you, accomplish your needs, then everything will turn out okay. So then I never counted, and I always did very, very well, but I never counted before going in. And it's kind of like, they know you're in it, you're just in it for the money.
So beautiful what you just said. I mean, so many, over the years, I cannot tell you the number of times I watched people on my sales team counting the commission before the deal was signed. And that always leads to heartbreak, right? Because then you don't want to give up anything. It's down to the nickel. And then the client might want to change their mind on a little something, and it's still a great deal. But then now you're disappointed because you're down $100 or whatever. So yeah, I never was a fan of counting the commission before the deal was signed, and because you can't really do the right thing for the client.
Right.
But what you just said throughout this whole thing is really, it's not about tactics. It's about what the client really needs. And you could pick up on that early on, it sounded like.
Marie, doctors are probably some of the toughest people to get in front of because they're so busy, right? If they're not in front of patients, they're not making money. And it's a business. I mean, they need to be in front of patients helping. What was your tactic to get in with the doctors to see you?
So I always did the opposite of what every rep did. Every rep would go in, and they, one of the rules that was told to me was, only speak to the decision maker or you're wasting your time. Well, I treated everybody as a decision maker. Everyone was a decision maker. So I treated them like the receptionist. You're the decision maker. This is
Awesome.
going to change, this is going to make you a hero in this office. If you get this, the doctor's going to love you, and then I would explain to them, like, if they were the ones making the decision. And you know what? Doctors' offices, well, now a lot of them are HMO, but single practitioners, and if they own their own practice, a lot of times the person at the front desk may be their son, daughter, cousin, aunt, uncle, wife. You don't know who's at the front desk. And that's one of the things I learned. Many times it's a very dear friend or a close family member. And if the representative goes in and they think they own the place, and they think they're God, because a lot of them act that way, they're going to whisper to the doctor, hey, that rep is so rude, don't let him in. And that's why they can't get in to see the doctor. They'll never make it.
That's beautiful.
Wow, what a great advice.
Yeah, that's just such a great gem. I mean, there's a line out there, I forgot who said it. It was Dale Carnegie. Someone really famous said something about treating the janitor like the CEO.
Yeah, it's
Right?
true. So true.
And you get so much further in opportunities by doing that. And people love you. I mean, they're going to welcome you in by your first name, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
So now you're in a CEO position. You still go all over the place. Probably not as much as when you sold across the country, but and you're seeing doctors. Do you have salespeople that are working for you?
We do. We have distributors, independent distributors that sell for us.
Do you ever look at them and you're like, what the hell are you doing? I would have been selling quadruple what you're selling right now.
Many times I thought, yeah. But the thing is salespeople, they think they know it all. And if you think you know it all, you're going to struggle. And that's one of the lessons I learned. And I've experienced it firsthand where I've gone with a sales rep where they want to show the doctor how smart they are. So they go in with all this terminology, like, I'm as smart as you are, doctor. And they'll use all this medical terminology. And then the doctor's like, oh, really? You're challenging me. So then it becomes a fight, and not a physical fight, but just a fight of words trying to show who's better. And if the doctor asks me a question I don't understand, and I may know the terminology, you know what, I'm not a doctor, but I'll connect you to my clinical director who knows and can answer that question for you. Because you never, ever want to appear, and even if you know more, then maybe you're talking to a nurse or someone and you know more than they do, you should never, ever display that or say that you do. That's just like the worst thing to
Another
do.
Wow.
beautiful gem worth millions, ladies and gentlemen. So, are you comfortable with saying, I don't know the answer? Are you
I am comfortable saying I don't know the answer.
exactly?
Absolutely.
So, why do you think salespeople struggle with that phrase?
I think it's because their ego. They don't want to appear that they don't know. They want to be seen as the expert.
Yep.
But there's nothing wrong in saying that you don't know, or connect, and then connecting them with someone who does know the answer, or saying, I'll get back with you. And you'll be much more respected than giving the wrong answer, or pretending that and
Yeah, faking it, right?
faking it. Yeah.
Yeah. That is so awesome. I mean, I can't tell you again, this is a number of things that over the years is that you can always tell which salesperson was going to sell strategically in an account versus the ones who would sell and move on because they just didn't have the ability to go into an area where they didn't know the answer. So pride or ego got in the way of their sales success, right? It's
Yeah,
not because right they don't know or they don't want to know. It's just I'm too proud to say I don't know. It's like the dumbest thing in the world, right?
yeah, they
Yeah.
feel like they need to be, in charge, or they feel like they're there to answer all the questions and
So
instead
what
of ask the
advice? I'm
questions.
sorry, Eric. I'm
No, no, go
just so
ahead, Harry.
excited. I'm jumping on my
Yeah, yeah,
skin.
yeah.
What advice, if I had a group of salespeople listening to you, Marie, what advice would you give them if you were trying to get them to cross sell into accounts instead of just selling one product, moving on, and they didn't feel like they knew enough about the other products, and struggled with I don't know. What advice would you give them?
Don't be afraid to admit that you don't know. Don't stop learning. You gotta keep learning. Don't stop learning. We never finish learning. We never know it all. And if you have a heart of seeking answers, wanting to know truth, wanting to know some answers, seek it out. And but test it. Look at everything. Don't just take one person's word for it. You need to test it out, because not all the advice out there is good advice. There's so many sales books I've read. A lot of them have great advice, a lot of them have bad advice. So be careful. Where is it coming from? Is it in your best interest, or is it in the customer's best interest? If you're always looking for the customer's best interest, your best interest is going to come in. It is going to come in, but you have to have the customer's best interest in mind first. And so what that advice that's coming out, you have to look at where is it coming from? Is it coming from a point of it's feeding your ego, it's feeding you, or is it feeding your customer? And that's kind of how you can discern whether it's good advice or bad advice.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I always try to pay attention to. And like I said, I don't believe that I'm a born sales rep, or that I can sell anything, because I have to believe in the product. If you don't believe in the product, you don't believe in the service, if it's not something you yourself would buy or use, then don't represent that company. Go find a company that you respect. Go find a company with a product that you believe in, because you have to have that passion for it, and it has to be
Absolutely.
sincere. It can't be fake.
Yeah, I
Wow.
totally agree. And it's like if you're bringing credibility to the company, like if you are the credibility for the company, then you need to go elsewhere, right? Because you
Right.
have to have someone behind you that's also credible, right? But this idea of saying I don't know is really priceless. And I'm willing to bet that people saw that in you when you were new and, going into places that you probably never dreamt about going into and having conversations with, you mentioned University of Texas and Baylor. I mean, these are pretty big accounts, ladies and gentlemen. And you're a person that freely admits that you didn't have all the answers. I'm willing to bet that was a huge reason for your success. It's just
Yeah, I
that
believe so.
humility.
Yeah, and being willing to
You
find
agree?
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Marie,
Stuff.
so I mean, you're pretty successful. You've been doing this for 25 years. You've had this company now for what, 10, a little over 10?
10 years.
And within the last, I'd say 3 or 4 years, your speaking career really took off. I mean, I've seen you in Jamaica working with young ladies to help them with their self-image. In the UK, in some huge event, you and Nick Vujicic were in Texas providing value. Like, you're all over the place, Marie. By the way, it's so cool that we have you on our show. What's driving that? Like, why not just stick to being the CEO of Balance Back and, help me understand what you're
So
doing? What the hell are you doing?
I don't know. I don't know. So I never sought out to be a speaker. It sort of happened because, when I joined John Maxwell team, I wanted to get that leadership because here I'm like, what am I doing leading this company? I don't know anything, And so I wanted to get this leadership stuff down packed. And I think it was Joyce Diaz was like, Marie, how did you become CEO of this company? So I told her I got fired about the company, blah, blah, because you need to share that on stage. And I was like, okay, a year passes. Why haven't you done it? Like, okay, I'll do it. So then I signed up to speak on stage, and I had this dream. And in my dream, God's like, that's not your story. This is your story. And it's the story I shared earlier about my mom and my birth. And so before I know it, I'm sharing that story in front of 5,000 people because it was the largest event they ever had during an IMC. And were you there, Eric, or you missed it?
I wasn't at the event, but I saw the video.
Oh, you saw the video. Okay.
Mhm.
So there was like
You rocked it, by the way.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah.
I was you know how they say your knees are knocking? It's the first time I felt my knees knocking.
I can tell. I mean, you own that stage, and that's the first time I heard your story.
Rock star.
Yeah. So go ahead.
So after that, a lot of women came up to me and they said, I had a lady came up to me. She says, I'm 35 years old, and for 35 years, I've been living with shame. And today you release this shame. And she says, because I too am a product of rape, and I was living with I was raised by my grandparents, and I was so shameful. Nobody knows about it. And tears are streaming down my face because story after story. And I'm like, okay, I'll do this if I get asked. So I would get asked to speak, and the same response. And that's kind of how it started. And then one day, Les Brown calls me, and a friend of ours connected us, and he told him my story. And he says, I want to meet you. And I'm like, okay. And then he says, I'm going to go to your office. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't believe it. Like, whatever. I didn't think he'd show up. I thought he was just saying this to say it. And he shows up, and I see him driving up. I see him in a parking lot. I'm like, oh, there's Les Brown. Came in.
That's crazy. I remember when we were when Marie came to visit me at my house after I got out of my surgery, she called Les Brown, like they were like buddies. And it was a video call, I think. He might have been in a hospital too at that point. And
Yeah,
she's like, and me and him were talking, and I'm like, wow, this is like the coolest thing ever. Because I idolized Les Brown. I mean, his speech has got me through so many tough days. That I don't know, I just thought it was the coolest thing. But then I see Marie, they're like doing selfies together, they're doing like what me and you do here, it's her and Les Brown, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like the guy that's speaking at packed stadiums of 70,000 plus people and rocking the house.
Yeah, we should send Marie a check for $5,000 just for appearing on our podcast. So will you take care of that for her?
I get a family discount.
Okay, good. Oh, that's awesome. A great story.
All right, so what's next for you, Marie?
You know what? I don't know. I don't know. Wherever God leads. We really don't know what the future holds, because there's so many unknowns right now. In we've got people saying that this COVID's going to be worse in the fall,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got politicians that want to keep the shutdown for months on end with no ending in sight, and then there's politicians that want to open it up right away. I don't know what it looks like, but since experiencing, what I've experienced when I speak on stage, I have a big heart for women, as single women. I have a podcast called Single Parent Success. It is in Spanish, and it's grown to 42 radio stations, and it's a Christian station, and we're in multiple all over the US and other countries, Colombia, Chile, on AM and FM radio. So that's one of the things I'm doing. I'm doing a couple of podcasts.
It's awesome.
God's Girls, His Wisdom. I'm doing several things to help others. So any way that I can reach out to struggling single parents, that's really where my heart is. And so I'm just looking to wherever I can serve, and that's pretty much it.
That is a great answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ladies, that's awesome. Yeah.
What I always ask this: what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Legacy. Well, for me right now at this time in my life, having, raised four that are now adult children by myself, I have a heart for families, and my desire is to somehow put a little dent into how can we reconcile families together so that we stop this breakdown of family. I always wanted a perfect family because I didn't have a dad, my mom's situation, and I didn't get that, because of the mistakes I've made, choices I've made with relationships. I didn't get that. And now for my faith is really a big part of my life. It's hard. And I know this is a business podcast, so I'm sorry.
No, this is all good. This is business.
This is a human experience podcast.
Exactly.
This is
That's
being
true.
human. So
the human experience, yes.
We wouldn't be authentic if we didn't let you talk about your faith or anything that's really driving you. So please.
And we love it. So yeah, continue.
Thank you. So my faith is a big part of my life now. And the way I see it, I just see that in order to have a solid, I guess in order to see culture thrive and societies thrive, you need to have intact families. Mother, father, children being raised together by intact families. And I see the breakdown of family. So that's why I have this radio show. That's why I'm doing these podcasts, because I see the effects that it's had on my children. And I see the effects it's had on my life, just the way I was raised. I'm thankful I had my grandparents there for me, but not everybody has that. Not everybody has, grandparents or aunts and uncles that can help raise the child. So my big heart is, if I can, and even if it's in my own family, I have 3 children that are married. If I can just make sure their marriage is solid and it's strong, and it's until death do us part, so that those kids can grow up, with a healthy mother and father. So that's pretty much the legacy I want to leave. And that's where my heart is at this time.
So based on what you said, right? Because I don't share this too often, and I don't remember my childhood well, but my mom was also married 3 times, pretty much raised us on her own. And I remember, I had to be 2 or 3, but I would remember waking up and I would hear either my dad beating her because he was drunk, screaming, everything thrown around. Like, you went through that with I can't remember, I think it was your second husband who was abusive to your children while you were gone. Do you recommend that families stay together in that situation? Because I really commend you for what you did. That was brave, and I mean, I don't know the whole story, but it sounds like your kids were raised better with you, with love around them, than if they would have seen an abusive guy in their life.
I absolutely do not recommend in that situation. That's dangerous. And if you're in a situation where there's abuse going on, you need to get out. You need to get to safety. And absolutely, you need to stay away from that person. But my thing is, I think that too many times we look at our culture, we look at TV, we look at the media, and we look at um, blended families, and we think, oh, that's going to be beautiful, that's what I want, and you seek that out, and so you end up in a second marriage, third marriage, fourth marriage, and you're dragging your kids through it all, and your kids are seeing this, the breakup of
Mm.
the family. I just think that if you're a single mom, your first and primary responsibility is your children. You don't have time for
Absolutely.
anything else. You have to take care of your children. You have to focus on your kids to make sure that they're safe, they're healthy, and you're taking care of their emotional, financial needs. And a lot of times women, and I can speak for myself because I've been there, we feel like I need a man. I have to have a man. And you don't know. My second husband was a vice president of a bank, very involved in church, very active, everybody very charismatic. And the judge was just horrified at what had happened. And had I not come home early that day from that business trip, it could have been hidden for me,
Wow.
and I think it was by God's grace, I got home early. So my thing is, yeah, but what I see a lot of marriages because, my husband, this guy treats me so much better than my husband. And it's not, a really a valid reason. Just,
Mhm.
I heard someone say this, if the marriage doesn't serve you anymore, you need to end it. And this is from a president of a very well-known organization and inspires millions of people everywhere. And I thought of that, and like, that's just wrong, because love is a choice. It's not always a feeling. You don't
Mm.
always feel like loving someone. I mean, let's face it, it's an emotion. It is an emotion, but it's a choice. Just like our kids. I mean, sometimes my kids drive me nuts, but I still love them. It's a choice. I choose to love them, even though
Mm.
they're not always perfect kids. And if we don't, if we're not living unconditional love, God says he loves us unconditionally, right? But if we're not loving others unconditionally, how are we showing our children what unconditional love is? How can we ever know what that is? If we place conditions on everything,
Mm.
if you don't do this, I won't love you. If you don't do this, you don't do that. But with our kids, we love them no matter what. But
Right.
then with our husband, that we're supposed to say, till death do us part, we place all these conditions.
Mm.
So
That's
I
there's so much value in there. I mean, I want to just
Unbelievable.
listen for the next couple of hours, but that is so true and so awesome. I mean, you look at people. I mean, I was just talking to a friend of mine. My wife and I have been married for a long time, and this whole COVID-19 6 weeks, she's threatening bodily harm on me these days because she's just sick of me. So I'm kidding, right? But it's just you have to just endure challenges. You have to think through: is this the person that I loved from whatever number of years ago? What made me love the person? It's a thought process that helps you
Mhm.
overcome the challenges, not always a feeling, right?
Right.
So I just love the words of wisdom there. So you have a new
Yeah.
fan. I am a huge fan of yours. It's awesome listening to you.
And I'm an even
Thank you.
bigger fan because
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, Marie. I was until I heard you say what you just said. I think deep down inside, I felt that way. Like I'm a big believer of marriage shouldn't be hard, and I think that you should have a partner that's there with you through thick and thin. But if that partner is also making your life hard, just walk away. And I'm not, I haven't evaluated that in a long time. Now that I have two kids, I don't think I could walk away as fast as I thought I could before. So you've changed my mind, and you're a tremendous inspiration, Marie. We're so glad that you spent time with us today. I can't wait for this thing to air. Um, Anything you got to say, Harry, before we take off?
No, again, I don't want to take away from the excitement and all the great things that Marie said, but the wonderful things that you said about sales, about being yourself, about being honest, not being afraid of saying, I don't have the answer or I don't know. Your willingness to just get past what other traditional beliefs are in sales and just be yourself. is huge. Your go get 'em attitude. You know, you called it making little lies. I refer to it as acting, but you know, your back was against the wall and you needed an opportunity and you made the best of it. And I think everything about that is commendable. And I'm just thrilled. I'm like Eric. I can't wait till others hear this.
I'll add one more thing to it before we go, and that's one thing you said that we kind of brushed over was like, yeah, a doctor asked me, if I knew if I could research this device. We couldn't find anything on the market, so I just created it and had FDA approve it. like you brushed over it, like it's like, yeah, I went out and had lunch at Chipotle, and that was it. Like we can have a whole episode on that, and what I'm getting out of this is there's so many people out there, myself included, that we are victims, right? Oh my God, my daddy didn't love me. Oh my God, I got fired. I'm worthless. I suck. And you're like, it doesn't even phase you. Like, it didn't even happen. Yeah, I got fired, and then I just went and started my own company. And then, yeah, then I just created a medical device and made some money and went back and bought the company. Why wouldn't I do that?
We definitely have to have you back on to hear a little more of the details. But that was a great overview. But yeah, there's just
oh my gosh, yeah,
It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy though.
no, it's not. What does Les say about life being easy? Right?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in.
Where are we finding Marie?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I almost forgot. Marie,
Yeah.
how do people get in touch with you?
You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Marie Cosgrove. My website's mariecosgrove.com, which I'm updating. But I will soon have a bunch of resources on there because I'm going to start putting all of my radio shows that I've been doing since I've got a ton of episodes. I'll start putting them on there because people ask me, can I get the replay on this? Can I get the replay? So I'll start putting those on there. And yeah, just follow me on Facebook and Instagram.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Marie Cosgrove, and we'll put all those links in the show notes for you guys. It's an honor, Marie. We wish you the best in your future. And if you guys have not done so yet, please go to Facebook, join us in the B2B Sales Secrets group so we can have a more intimate conversation with you as well. Have a great day, everybody.